Hi everyone, Holly from Stay for Kids here. And I want to introduce you to somebody that I found just recently, Noni. I came across Noni, a friend of mine on TikTok did a story about Noni's son, who I believe is a little hero. He was a young 4-year-old who unfortunately was abused in a daycare centre. And my friend did a TikTok highlighting the case, and Noni commented to say, I'm the mum of that boy. And I reached out to her because in her comment she mentioned that she had done my online course. So I reached out because I wanted to get some feedback from her. So thank you for giving me your time.
No problem.
And yeah, so would you like to tell us about your son's particular story?
Yeah, sure. When my son was about 3 years old, I started teaching him some protective behaviors through your material that I found online. I must have just Googled and your website or something had come up straight away. So I've taught him sort of protective behaviors, and a year later, he was at daycare, and for the first 2 months, he started to having to go to the toilet to urinate quite frequently. And then he decided to complain that he didn't want to go to school, to daycare. And then it ended up being one afternoon I had picked him up from daycare, and we were walking to the car, and I was asking him how his day was, and he started to talk about how bad his day was, and he wasn't happy, and he was obviously something had affected him. And I'm one of those parents that will ask like how their day was, but sort of not listen quite. And then all of a sudden, I do remember my ears hearing the word, he touched my doodle. And I was like, hold on a minute. And I was putting him in his car seat. So I've gone back around and I've jumped into my front seat, and I had one of those flip phones, and I was able to sit like that so I could record him without him realizing I was recording. And I said, hold on, who's Ali? But he wasn't saying it Ali, he was saying, are we? And he said, oh, it's my daycare teacher. And I said, what did you just say to me that he done to you? And yeah, he said he pinched me on my doodle. And I said, how did that make you feel? And he said, it makes me feel very sad. And yeah, I sort of went straight into the daycare after he said that to me. And yeah, sort of rolled from there. And it was very one of those slow motion things that happens when a child tells you your whole world around you stops. And because we went through the Supreme Court and we got a guilty verdict, one of the things that helped the guilty verdict was that I recorded the conversation of his first disclosure. And I went straight back into the daycare right there, got back out of the car, took him straight back in. One of the things that he'd done was he bit the daycare worker on the arm. So after he pinched him on the doodle, my son turned around and bit him on the arm. So there was evidence of a bite mark on his arm the next day, of the daycare worker's arm. And yeah, so there were some main things that really helped get a guilty verdict. So
And that's the thing, parents, it just came out of left field. That's, and we've had, this is our second we spoke before this, and we had a conversation over the phone, and twice you've said you never thought it would happen, in your family. No parent does. It was just an average day, and like every other day you picked him up. And so
I think yeah. So with my son, I felt like I could have done better parenting with my girls. And so I made sure with my son that I was going to step up and do a better job. And so I made sure I had a really good relationship with his dad, and I made sure that I taught him protective behaviors and how to protect himself when I wasn't around. And what I didn't plan for was a pedophile in a daycare center. So that you just don't plan for those things ever. Like I just never never would have ever imagined that it would happen. So
and did the
yeah.
daycare handle it correctly? Did they
No, unfortunately, they didn't. They didn't believe my child straight away. They made me, are you sure it wasn't just a bump on the penis, or like, are you sure it wasn't this or that? And actually, I didn't even find out about the bite mark till a few days after, and it was never reported to the police. I actually waited 3 weeks, and because I didn't know, I just trusted in the daycare center. I trusted in the process, that I didn't know what to do either. So I was waiting, and I called because it was referred to child services, but because child services is about home, family, and that is not to do with that, they should have referred, CYPS should have referred it to the police, and they didn't. So the daycare didn't call the police either, so no one contacted the police. But altogether, it took me 6 phone calls in about 3 weeks till someone took my child's statement. And I was fuming by this stage, because I was like, a crime's been committed. No one's contacted me. Like, he's 4. He might not remember what happened. I don't know. So I was at a birthday party one weekend, and I was venting. I was like, I'm mad. And I called the sexual assault hotline in Canberra, and they said, go to the police, keep calling. Like, yeah, they were really supportive, and encouraged me to keep going. And yeah, so that's what I've done, and finally got a hold of the same police officer I spoke to the week before. And he's like, oh, you still, like, no one still hasn't. He's like, hold on, let me make a job number. And yeah, got onto it.
And that's the thing, people don't teach parents what to do. That's why I know you printed off my parent handbook. In the back of the book, we've got what to do in a disclosure and what actually to say, because, and it says, first thing it says, stay calm. Stay calm. When has telling someone to stay calm ever worked?
Yeah.
Of course you can't, because the cortisol just races to your brain, and you just want to, fix things. You want to help your little child. But that's why I've got, to say to kids, I'm glad you told me. I believe you. It's not your fault, and I'm going to do something about it. And then we need to contact authorities. Actually, to be honest, I wouldn't have even, it's not your fault, but not to go back to the daycare centre, because, they didn't. Here in Western Australia, we would go to our Department for Child Protection and to the police, because, sometimes, and it just sounds like with your centre, that they believe the adult rather than the child.
It wasn't it wasn't till because I didn't want to re-question my son either, because I didn't want to put words into his mouth.
Perfect. That's exactly, you did the right thing there.
So I didn't know what happened to my son, really, and I was left in the dark with everything. And it wasn't until after I gave my evidence in court that I could sit in the gallery and listen to more evidence. So I did hear so the daycare done their own investigation and possibly tainted the evidence. They didn't seem biased, so I do give them that when they were interviewing the carer. So they were holding him to account. I mean, that I'm thankful for. But it wasn't until I sat in court and I heard all this stuff that it's sort of like, okay, this is what happened, and that sort of stuff. Forgot where my train of thought was going there, but so they ended up re-updating their policies, and because I sent them an angry email because I was like still waiting for the police to call me, and I said, you guys should have called the police straight away, like a crime happened. And so in their policy, they have updated that they will call the police. So,
but surely, in my state, there's every year they have to do manned reporting training. It's in their policies, and that's the first thing, is contact authorities.
Yeah.
Do they not?
I think it's still like a week after they made their mandatory report as well.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And when we had our conversation on the phone, you mentioned that when your son went to court, they tried to twist it, and they said that, yes, he bit him, and they tried to use that against your son and said that he made up the story.
Yeah.
And so he wouldn't get into trouble.
Yeah, so a psychologist was, we had a psychologist, the DPP put a psychologist up, just to sort of educate the jury mainly about protective behaviours and how children act. And she said, like, a child would never come up with a reason, a 4-year-old would never come up with that type of reason to cover up biting someone. So it's just, they're not strategic like that.
Was it he bit him and he spat at him or something?
No, he just bit him.
Bit
but
him, okay.
yeah, when the daycare worker was questioned by the employers and that, he added on extra stuff that my son done. And what was good was there was another daycare worker who had seen the bite on the arm that day, and the daycare worker actually never reported my son biting him on an incident report. He never told me and about the bite. It just and then one of the other daycare workers noticed it, and she actually gave evidence, and she said, my son's not like that. Like, you said my son wasn't like that. He's a lovely boy. It was definitely very out of character for him to bite somebody. And yeah, my son's not a boy. He is more of a sensitive soul. He likes to hang out with the girls and play mums and dads. But he likes doing that with the girls because they let him be a cat. So when he grows up, he wants to be a cat. I think that's changed now though. But yeah, so he's just a lovely, caring boy. He's raised by me and my 2 girls. So he's surrounded by females.
And they're older, aren't they? They're much.
Yeah. So I've got a 14 and a 12-year-old.
So what would you say to parents? What would you, because I know now you're very passionate about protective behaviours and getting this into daycares in Canberra. What would you say to parents?
Google protective behaviours because it's just a 1 or 2 things. Like if anything, just read one thing or teach your child one thing. But yeah, I think just body safety and having that open line of communication with your child, so they know that they can come to you and talk about anything and not, you never, they'll never get in trouble type thing. It doesn't matter what they do type stuff. And yeah, I think just knowing to be the boss of your own body as well, and that they can say no to adults. So, and even with things like tickling and that sort of stuff at home, like we really need to respect our child with that sort of stuff.
Oh, consent is so important. I say that we need to start protective education from 3 at the latest. Yeah. And, exactly like you said, tickling's a great example. As soon as they say no or stop, then you have to stop straight away. And then if the kid wants you to continue, okay, do it again. And then they say stop, then you stop. Because, we need to teach body autonomy from, this big. If you were holding a toddler, even if they couldn't talk, if you were holding them and I wanted a cuddle, I'd say, hey, can I have a cuddle? If they put out their arms, I'd take them. If they cuddle into you, I wouldn't take them, even though they're not talking. We can still show them that they're the boss of their body, because, there's so many things that we can do in a non-verbal way. Teaching them the anatomical names for their private parts.
Yeah. So one of the most important things that it was a bit disappointing, there was another child involved as well. They weren't taught the correct body parts. So unfortunately, she was telling her teachers that something was happening, but her teachers weren't being alarmed because she wasn't saying he touched me on the vagina. It was she used another word for it. And yeah, I think that was sort of a really good example of why that we need to teach correct body part names, so that, because your kids can be talking to you all the time and you can sort of like switch off a little bit and not fully pay attention. But when you hear those words, penis or vagina, you stop in your tracks and you turn your head and you're like, huh, repeat what you just said then, like what? So that's why they are so important to use those words, because they do grab adults' attentions when we're sort of only half paying attention. So and another good one was early warning signs. As adults, like I always get early warning signs in certain situations, or I feel like, you get a bit funny around certain people. And I just would never have thought to have taught my children about early warning signs. Like, it happens to me as an adult. Like, why aren't we teaching children to recognize that themselves? So that was a really important one for me to teach my son as well. So it was good.
Yeah, trust your guts. I've actually got it on a T-shirt, thanks to a young boy out in an Aboriginal community who was. He worked out himself after me teaching him. He recognised he was being groomed online, and he said, "Miss, he was starting to talk rude ways. So I listened to my body and I trusted my gut." So now I've got a T-shirt that says, "Listen to kids, believe kids, and trust your guts."
Okay.
Because we do, often you'll have had somebody stand next to a crowd and you go, "Oh, there's something about them that just creeps me out."
Yeah.
So if as adults we can do it, and as adults we would call it intuition, gut feeling, sixth sense. But with kids, when we call them early warning signs, and we talk about how animals show their early warning signs, even little kids, 3 and 4 year olds, when you teach it well, they can recognize it. And people underestimate 3 and 4 year olds. They say they're too young to understand this, and that's why we wrote our early years curriculum, because you can teach this. That's why we wrote it. So in childcare they can, the way that we've done it is that it's a 10-week lesson plan. And so if kids only go to daycare 1 or 2 days a week, they're going to get something on the program. So there's one activity to do every day for 5 days on early warning signs. But we've also written a newsletter to go home that says, next week we're going to be learning about early warning signs. So please show this newsletter to everybody your child knows, because we want everybody knowing that the kids that go to this daycare know this program. That alone could be a protective factor.
I found a lot of so many of the daycare workers there, they were all groomed as well. In giving evidence, they all said like he's really great with kids. I think one of them said like, he's like a toy to the children. That's literally, and I was like, whoa, she said that word.
Red flag.
Yeah. There was definitely grooming involved with the adults there. I don't know if I got my I don't know, I'm just more aware now of, and I'm always looking, I don't know, I think it might be an anxiety thing where I'm always looking and at other people's behavior a little bit more than what I would usually do. But I think all parents need to learn what those grooming things are, because the adult is usually the first person to be groomed when there's children around.
Exactly. And that's, they have to get through all of the layers before they get to the child. And, they do have to break down all of those sort of inhibitors and to get access to children. So, my great nephew goes to a childcare, and there's a young fella that works there, and I would hate for him not to be there because my nephew absolutely loves him. So we need kids to have young men working in childcare. And we don't want to suspect everybody, but that's why the program is so important, because, and a lot of people, I'm not going to lie, a lot of people don't like protective education because they say it's putting the onus on children to keep themselves safe.
We can't be there all the time to protect them at all.
Thank you for saying that as a parent, because you're exactly right. It has to be home, childcare or school and the child all working together. Kids are the last line of defense. You've said it perfectly. You cannot always be there. But you can give them the tools that, should something unsafe happen, that they can tell you. And that's what he did. And in my eyes, how many children has he protected because he spoke up?
I think what happened, because I'm a little bit hard on myself too, because it was happening over about 2 to 3 months. So he didn't necessarily tell me straight away, but I think what's happened is maybe he was having those early warning signs and he was starting to process what was it, because he would have been slowly groomed in. I think it slowly sort of naturally probably progressed. And I look back on seeing the things that I like, all the things that was happening to him, it all made sense when I put it together. that, oh, okay, that's why, like, yeah. And another thing was the daycare, they had security cameras all up in the areas. So even having security cameras up, it was still able to, there was a bit of a black spot where you could, where the abuse was happening. So yeah, it doesn't matter if there's security cameras at your daycare, it still will happen to your child. So I mean, it still can happen to your child. Yeah.
Wow. And how is he now? People, I'm
Oh,
sure.
he's really resilient. He's really good. So yeah, when this was all happening, he was going to the toilet probably 4 to 6 times within the hour. It was an anxiety response. And the next day after he went, I told him, like, do you want to go back to daycare the next day? I said, Ali's not going to be there. And straight away he was like, oh yes, I do. He was so happy that this carer wasn't going to be there. And that morning, actually, the next day was the first time that he woke up early, got dressed himself, because prior to that, I was having to dress him and I was having to like nag him to get to school. And yeah, I think yeah, it was a good thing that, yeah, he's done that. But
And so if what am I going to say? Would you oh no, that's what I've lost my train of thought. You when we spoke on the phone, you mentioned the court system and
yeah.
how hard it was for him. How would you change that? Because a 4-year-old going through the court system,
Yeah.
that was pretty harrowing for him, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, so that's where I was going before. So with his toileting, then it went away after a while. After a while, it went away, and then when we went back to the court for their pre-trial hearings. So in Canberra, they've got some really good stuff set up. So they've got like child-friendly rooms and family rooms, and it's got like a little room that you go to give your evidence, and the parents can wait in the family bit. And they've got like dogs there, like the guide dogs that didn't quite make it to being a guide dog. So they're well trained, but they didn't make it. So I was like, oh, that's so cute. So they had those dogs, and just a really good, comfortable environment for the children to be able to give their evidence. And they had like the judge and all the lawyers and that come in normal clothes to meet the kids, so that they they didn't feel it was scary. And they said, we'll be wearing black when you see us on the screen next, and sort of, yeah, so that was comforting. And yeah, so we had, yeah, Jaggers having to go to the toilet again, so that started up again over the pre-trial, and now it's gone away. So it's probably been 2 months it took for his body to come again. But even when we went in there, he's like, mummy, I can't breathe. And we're like, oh, it's probably his shirt. So his dad unbuttoned his shirt, and he goes, no, mum, I haven't been able to breathe all week. And I was like, oh my God, I knew to go in there, and I needed to like have good energy, because I know that, he can feed off my energy if it's negative or whatever. So I really had to like, it wasn't about me that day. It was about like being the strong one. And as soon as he said that, I was like, whoa, I nearly, like, I was going to cry. So yeah, I sort of said something to his dad, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to break. That was the hardest thing to hear. Yeah.
And the questioning of him, though, was that hard for him?
He was only in there for about 20 minutes. He's very articulate. So yeah, he was very good in there. And every time the defense were saying, no, that's not correct, you done this, he would turn around, and apparently, his dad was in the room with him giving evidence. And apparently he was like, no, that's not right, he done this. So yeah, he was like, you can't trick me, pretty much. So
oh, that's so good.
Yeah,
being assertive.
I knew
love
he
it.
would do well. So and I sort of said to him, remember, because our main purpose with taking him to court was to make sure that he never worked in daycare again. I knew that he probably wouldn't be able to, he wouldn't get a jail sentence or anything like that. He was only being tried for that one particular day. So yeah, our main purpose was so that he didn't work with children again. And so I said to him that, you're a superhero, and you have to, I've sort of made that he was doing this, to save other children. And save it happening to them, because it didn't feel nice, did it, when, it happened to you? And he's like, no. So he wanted to make sure that it didn't happen to any other kids.
So is he on a sex offender register?
Yeah, he's not a citizen though, so his visa is automatically cancelled.
Oh,
If you
okay.
have a child sexual offence against you, you're automatically cancelled. Currently, at the moment, he's objecting to the juror's decision. He thinks it was unreasonable or something like that. But I think he's just clutching at straws. Like, you can't question the jury, and you can't, they don't have to give you a reason why they came to that conclusion. It's a part of our system. So yeah, he's just clutching at straws to try and save his visa so he doesn't get kicked out of the country. And it's sad because he will be kicked out of the country, and he could start doing this stuff to children overseas. So, but I can't think of, I just have to think of the children here. That's all I can do at this stage. But
Wow.
yeah, but yeah,
Well,
it's pretty rude to come to our country, abuse our children, and criticize our, the jury and our justice system. It's outrageous. So, I mean, he's not even going to get jail time. He probably won't get jail time. He'll get a good behaviour bond, or whatever you call it. So, likely.
Well, I really value your time, and I'm glad that you're going to be a crusader in this field in Canberra, and it does need to start in childcare. It's too late when they get to school. Most states, require protected behaviours to be taught in schools, but we need to start much earlier, because
well, I think one of the statistics was that I read that it was something crazy, like 80% or something of child sexual abuse will happen when a child is 4 years old. And sure enough, my son was 4 years old when it happened. So there you go, he's part of that statistic. So it's definitely very important to teach our children, but also to just know, to teach adults. Adults need to know this. Even adults that don't have kids, like we had 12 jury members that didn't know this sort of stuff. Well, I don't think they did. Like, we had to get a psychologist in to explain some things to them, so that they could make a decision. So we need to sort of, everyone needs to know about it. So,
well, one of the big national organisations did a huge survey a couple of years ago, and they found that 1/3 of Australians would believe a child if they told them they were being sexually abused. 2/3 would not believe a child. They think that they would make it up.
All right. Actually, one of your what's it called? The safety team. So it's 5 adults that a child can go to, to tell, if they're getting, the early warning signs, or, they need help. I don't know if it was your book or not, but on my safety team, we had mum and dad, and then at the daycare, we had 2 people at the daycare. So that, and, other friends, we had, I think, all up probably about 10. But it was because if one teacher's away,
yes,
you've got someone else to go to.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And, but I don't know if that was in your book, but I've done that anyway.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Well done.
Oh, okay. So, I thought that, because I posted on my social media, and I always share your videos on Facebook and that onto my page. And I've had a friend comment, and she said that, she did try and tell other people and no one believed her, and she's an adult now. But it's they do.
And that's why we have 5, because so when I'm doing training, I say there are 3 things about the program that I'm most passionate about. Persistence is the first, because that's why we have 5. So if the first person doesn't listen, you have to keep telling. Your little man he told you and you believed him straight away, but they did a study, and children have to tell usually at least 3 people before they're listened to. The second is consent, and we need to explicitly teach consent. And the third is we need to teach kids the correct anatomical names for their private parts. It's a 10-week lesson plan that I've produced, and I'm passionate about the whole thing, but those are the 3 things that I'm most passionate about, because the amount of times that I do a parent workshop and I have parents come up afterwards and say, I'm so glad I've learnt this for my children, but it happened to me and I told somebody and I wasn't believed. So you know,
Yeah,
we
that's good.
even the foreword in my parent handbook was written by somebody who told her mum, and she wasn't listened to, unfortunately. So
Yeah,
that's why we have to keep telling, because
yeah,
you know, nobody
definitely.
wants to think. We've just had a child abduction here on Friday here in WA by a stranger. It was a child walking to school. So of course everybody in the media is back onto stranger danger when we know, you know, 90% of people that harm children are known to the children.
Yeah.
So stranger danger just doesn't cut it.
And I think in this day and age, I feel more comfortable with my child walking home than like online world is the new hunting ground. You don't need to worry about your child being outside now. You need to worry about your child being in their bedroom alone with their phone. So I think there was a podcast through these eyes or looking through their eye. I don't know. It was an Aussie guy and he'd done about online predators, and it's jaw-dropping to listen to. So yeah, it definitely opens your eyes up to the predators online. There's millions of them. They've got these groups and they just already, I think the war in Ukraine, they were all getting excited about because of all the children that are going to be misplaced and that they can take advantage of. And it's just crazy. And yeah, they give tips on how to, they give tips to men on how to be, where to have access to children. And one of them was go work in a daycare center. So you're like, what? Crazy.
Yeah.
So
Look, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope
that's okay.
And yeah, I'm glad you found our parent online course.
Yeah, thank you. It was so good.
And yeah, we're just about to launch our teacher training and our educator training. So we're hoping that lots of childcare centres will, you know, I'm going to share this everywhere. And before we came on camera, I was saying that we've got 2 centres here that have, you know, they've bought our kit, but they also, their parents get access to our parent course, and then their educators do our online training as well. So
that's good. Yeah,
I'm hoping that more centres will take up that option, because you know, it has to be everybody working together, and when the parents know what the kids are learning at daycare, and if we can start it as early as possible, maybe we can change those statistics. Because you know, back in April we had the maltreatment study that said, you know, that we now know the exact amount that 28.5% of Australia's children will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday.
Yeah.
How can we live in a world where that can happen? And so, you know, I'd love to be able to stop it, but education for me is the only way to curb that statistic.
Definitely.
So
100%. Yeah,
I look forward to supporting you in whatever way, if you're going to go down this track. And
definitely, I'll be definitely pushing it. And your resources are really good. They're really engaging, and they're really easy to follow. So I love it. It's great.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.